Hey, welcome back. Some more notes on Chapter 8. I really find this chapter interesting because it really gets into the human component and the emotions and how people kind of are their own worst enemy in investing. Very interesting in section 3, 4, and 5. Overconfidence. This is interesting. Men are more likely to be overconfident than women. Makes sense, right? A little bit more on the risk-taking side. I know that it's not always holding true. Well, it's always hold true, but overall, that tends to be the case in a lot of things, not just investing. I don't know why that is. Men tend to underestimate the risk, or maybe they're not just concerned about it. They just have a little bit more of a risk-taking mentality. So some interesting discussion on that. There's also something called a snake bite effect, which is very similar to the last video where I was talking about where folks don't want to make the same mistake twice. But you take a loss, and you're much less willing to take another risk. And again, that's another term for that. We talked about that before. Another term for that is called the snake bite effect. And then I want to get into a little bit of math here in terms of they talk about in section 8.4 about people underestimate the odds of things, right? They fail to really think about this in terms of the bet that they're making. And it's almost called like a clustering illusion. And so what that means is, let's take, for instance, you're in Vegas again. Obviously, I'm in Vegas quite a bit, but actually don't gamble that much, but I'm in Vegas for whatever reason. The roulette wheel, right? Someone sees, a red, 5 red numbers in a row. What do? Well, some people would bet on red, saying it's going to come up again. And others would say, well, I'm going to bet black because black has to come up, right? It's just the odds are it has to come up. Well, the reality is that on every roll, the odds are the same. It's like a coin flip. You flip a coin, flip a coin, flip a coin. All 3 times comes up head. What's on the 4th one, what are you going to bet on, right? Well, I'm going to bet on tails because it's got to come up, right? Well, the reality is that it's still 50-50 chance. And you all heard that before. But apply that to something that just like in terms of the effect of, well, the stocks are doing good, they're doing good, they're doing good, they're doing good. Well, obviously you're going to do well. You heard that on the videos in chapter 7. People putting money in the market, putting money in the market, keep putting it in because everybody else is going up, it's going up, it's going up, and then it goes down. So be very aware of these types of things as you go through your investing career. There's some good terms that you should really concentrate on at the bottom of page 265. The biases. You've got law of small numbers. So if you believe in this, if you think your investment guy has been right, 5 times in a row, 5 times out of 7. You might think that they're going to be right all the time. We talked about the fact that smart people make mistakes. So don't necessarily look at the past and say, well, it happened that way all the other times, so therefore it has to happen that way this time. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So be very, very careful about that. Recency bias, right? People tend to remember what happened, recently versus applying what happened maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago. Be careful about kind of getting caught up in all of that. And self-attribution bias. I like this one, right? So you tend to think when you happen to make an investment and you're right that it's due to your skill levels, but when you're wrong, it was somebody else's fault. So that's a bad way to from an attitude perspective. The reality is that you want to go out there and get as much information as you can. So there's some good biases in that they talk about. I think it's important. Wishful thinking bias, false consensus bias, availability bias. So wishful thinking, you suffer from wishful thinking bias, means you believe what you believe. I know this is going to go up. It's got to go up, and you invest. False consensus, this tendency to think that other people are thinking the same thing about a stock you own. It's kind of like everybody else is agreeing with you, so you go ahead and you do it. Well, that doesn't make it right. So be very careful about those types of things. And availability bias, you suffer from the availability bias when you put too much weight on information that's easily available and too little weight on the information that's hard to attain. So you don't go deep enough in your analysis there. So all of these biases can kind of lead you down the path of potentially making a poor decision. And then the most, the one very interesting part of this chapter is 8.5. I'm going to get to that in the next video because I want to keep these videos short for you. So that's good on 8.4. We'll talk here in a little bit on 8.5, and then we'll be done